Okay. Our Church Matters series that we began the end of May and into June. And now still the month of June, we're finishing this up. Of course, we took off for Father's Day. Last week, we actually took off due to Pastor Ron being out. We desired for him to come up here and be with us, of course, and answering any of the questions that you guys had. And then, lo and behold, his calling was to China. So as a reminder, if you were not here last Sunday, Pastor Ron is flying out today to China. 2 weeks out there. We'll be coming back then on the 13th of July. Be in prayer for him. Safety, obviously, flying is his actually greatest thing that he is scared of. But then in China, as we shared last week, is a situation that is very up and down as far as the police there are looking for Christians and are actually putting people in jail. Have actually invaded home teachings like this that was done before. So just to be in prayer for him, his safety as well, and then he'll be arriving back on the 13th. So he wrote in to the question, so I do have his responses for the Church Matters series. For those of you that haven't been part of this, we went through a series just casting vision as a pastoral team, talking mission as a church, getting through some philosophy of music. And in light of that, for those 3 weeks that we shared with you, we asked you to put in questions, texting questions, writing questions, and you have done that. So today we just want to share with you those questions and be able to answer them for you as a church. And then in time, there's not many questions through this series, and then Paul will finish up with a message on Sermon on the Mount, if there is time. Let's start with those questions. Question number one, and I'll read Ron's responses, and then we'll let everybody else respond as well. When you say once, so this is one of the first questions that came in. When you say, once you belong, if you remember, we went through the teaching on belong, behave, believe, and putting those in order. Once you say you belong, you can't help but believe. That kind of threw me. Did you mean that they have a greater chance of believing? Not that there's a guarantee. So again, in church, we're looking to have people feel that as they come in to church, that they're going to feel like there's a place here that they belong, that they have a desire to belong. And through that, there's an ideal that they will come to faith being around Christians and being around people of knowledge of Jesus Christ, that they'll believe. And then in the end, learn to behave. Ron's response was, there's no guarantee someone will believe after feeling they belong. The emphasis is on allowing people to see us as we are. Allow them to see our church working in unity, demonstrating the fruits of the Spirit. Accept them as Christ would, just as they are, while sharing the love of the gospel with them and interacting with them. There is the understanding that those who desire to be teachers and in certain leadership positions need to be mature Christians versus non-believers. However, there are many ways those who are not Christians can interact with our church body and see the reality of Christ lived out. This was obviously the piece that I was teaching. Any of the pastors could have taught that section that I was going through as far as the material, but the idea obviously is that we want a place here when visitors come in, when you bring your neighbors, your guests, that this is a place where we are not putting up walls, that we are very open to them, showing love to them, whether they are a believer from another church coming and seeking church, or whether they are totally fresh, non-Christian, don't have a Bible themselves, and are seeking a spiritual truth, because that is what God is doing. So we don't want us to be an offense, but we want, and in the end, the gospel message we know will be an offense, because as it purifies the heart and works in their heart against the sin nature. But we desire for a place that people will feel that they belong. It won't, in answering the question, guarantee, as Ron said, that they will come to a belief, but again, it's a greater way to build that relationship towards belief. Should we just pass mics?
No, that's good. I'm good. I think we're just coming through these monitors, Mark. This is not Mark's fault, by the way. It's mine. I didn't tell him we were doing this morning, so I'll just... Are we good? Are we good? Okay. Okay. Now that was Mike's fault there. If I sound fine to you, give me a thumbs up. Okay, I sound fine to you. Let me be clear about something. The Bible says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Okay, so a friendly face to greet you as you come in. Music done at a high level of excellence. Loving people are wonderful, amazing things that will draw people in. But people only come to faith through the proclamation of the gospel. And so we want to be clear on that at the heart and core of what we do is we proclaim the gospel. The gospel is not us. Okay, the gospel is not about us. The gospel is about what Jesus did 2,000 years ago to redeem us. So the gospel has meaning for us. And we reflect what the gospel has done, but we are not the gospel. All right, the gospel is a message, it's news that we proclaim. And so at the core of who we are is proclamation of the gospel. Now, in order to do that, you have to have lost people. You want to share that with lost people. And so when people who don't know Jesus, people who, as we've said, are far from Jesus, who are, maybe God's drawing them, maybe there's some searching, maybe it's just someone invited them, okay, I'll come with you. I don't know, but at the end of the day, we want people to be here to receive and know and experience what we've experienced through the gospel. And so we want to be really clear that what draws people is the gospel. What saves people is Jesus through the proclamation of the gospel. So
I'll give you a quick negative example, okay? I'm known around here for throwing things out, right? If it's gone, it's me. Okay, I take full credit for it, but a couple years ago, one of the things I found in here and threw out was paper skirts. Anybody remember the paper skirts?
No.
You don't remember the paper skirts?
That was before my time.
That's before your time? That was my time. Back in the 70s, mini skirts were really popular. And one of the things they did here at Faith, if girls showed up in mini skirts, they gave them a paper skirt to cover them up. How many of those girls do you think ever came back? It's not the message of, now I don't know if they actually did that. But when I found the paper skirts, I said, what are these? And these are to cover up girls that come in mini skirts. Now, if you were a visitor and you came to Faith and someone walked up and handed you a paper skirt, what are you going to think? Now, what we're saying is this, that whatever they show up in, we're going to say, welcome to Faith. We're glad you're here. Because the issue isn't a skirt, the issue is the heart. And ultimately, if you deal with the heart through the gospel, you can deal with people. And that's all we're saying. So if someone shows up next week in a miniskirt, say, welcome to Faith. And don't you show up in the miniskirt. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right.
How did we get there?
Well, number two.
I won't. Go ahead.
We have a second question. Not only is the music to glorify God, but God wants those to whom he's given talents to use it for his glory. How then can we ask people who have been playing for a number of years to no longer play, that their talents are no longer needed? Ron wrote in, all of our lives should glorify God. However, this does not imply that if someone has musical talent, they should be in a music ministry. We have to be careful with that assumption. There are times when a ministry may want to rearrange instrumentation, or such as it is, have the freedom to do that. And we need to be careful it is not viewed as stopping someone from glorifying God with their talents. That would assume that the only way a person could glorify God with their talents is by being up in front of the music ministry. With that, I respectfully disagree. When I led music worship here, for those that don't know, Pastor Ron Jones was leader of our music for several years, seven years, led music here. When I led music here, there were times to do musical changes and arrangements. And I asked people to either not sing or to be reassigned in a different musical format. This was not done out of a desire to forbid people to use their talents. Rather, it's the vision I had musically was one in which the changes needed to be made. Music is subjective. Leaders will have particular sounds and arrangements in mind. At times, he or she will add or subtract instruments, vocals, and based on their vision. It is not a personal thing towards any individual, but rather looking to achieve the musical vision in the leader's mind. That was well said. Anything else to add?
And the only thing I'll say is, anytime you go through times of transition in any particular ministry, transitions are always difficult, and you have to, you got to be careful how you navigate transitions. But transition's really never easy, and sometimes, you have to think about, if there's changes that have to be made, or if you're transitioning particularly leaders and leadership, then you have to. You got to make that as smooth as possible. So.
Every ministry has change. I mean, even when I was leading children's ministry, we would cut programs, begin programs, end things. People that are working in one area, we would ask them can you work in a different area? And so that's part of it. The need of it is to make sure that communication is done properly, through it, and done enough in advance and made known why the changes are being done. Number 3, how can we justify paying a full-time pay benefits for the responsibility level of a worship arts director for a church our size, even if figuring 8-hour days on a Friday through Saturday for prep? Pastor Ron wrote in for this one. I do not want to sound presumptuous, but it may be hard to convey the justification of time unless you personally have done such a position. The worship director position is more than picking out songs and leading them on a Sunday morning. If you take a look at the responsibilities for this position, it involves a lot of time. We've written a 4-page job description of what that ministry arts director would be doing, what it looks like, what the tasks are in the job. Let me try to give an analogy that I am sure will be flawed in some respect. Suppose I were to hire someone and ask him to simply prepare a lunch menu each week. He could sit down and come up with, what do you think Ron Jones would come up with? Fried chicken, mac and cheese, and applesauce. Sounds simple. However, he then needs to find where he is ordering the chicken from, what price, what is the best price. We'll need to butcher it, or will it come that way? Will he be getting it greased, fried in, and we could go on and on. He didn't even mention the applesauce and mac and cheese. My point is that there are musical elements that are considered as one begins to put songs in the menu. On top of this, the position involves training and developing the people involved. We could run down in multiple ways as this training may look besides the weekly rehearsals. Then there may be actual composing and rewriting parts, which itself can take a lot of time. Again, I understand that these working parts may not be understood, but they are involved in this position, and I would be glad to talk more of the parts in person when I arrive home.
It's easy for us to read Ron's. He's halfway to China, and so well, not yet, but having worked with the worship team for the past 2.5 years here and kind of overseeing it in a leadership capacity, the amount of work that particularly Bobby has to do every week to get ready for Sunday morning, to do music and the ministry at a high level of excellence is a lot. And can you get by, just part-time, someone kind of putting in a few hours a week? You can. You're gonna end up burning someone out, because anyone who loves worship and loves to do it well because it reflects how seriously they take the character, the nature, the glory of God, they're going to want to pour their hearts and souls into it, and it's just hard to do that. You'll end up burning people out if you don't watch out for their time, which is something, honestly, that Bobby started to struggle with his life stage and time with family. And without getting into that too detailed, one of the reasons why he has to transition out is just because of where he's at in life. He can't continue to give us the amount of time that is required to lead the music team. Other thing is, that when particularly Ron was hired. There were a number of different groups that he was able to work with and oversee and different opportunities. Right now, our worship music team is pretty much limited to what you see on a Sunday morning. We have some really big vision and ideas and plans for outreach and opportunities outside of the building, and particularly on opportunities within the Christmas and Easter holiday seasons that just naturally provide you an opportunity to bring in people. And so we have some big vision for putting together some things that will be able to minister the gospel to people, particularly during those two seasons, but also during the summer and things like that. And so the vision we have for a worship leader goes well beyond just the Sunday morning, although that is a big part of it. What we want to see happen is we want to see our outreach grow in our community, and we actually used to do that a lot more, and we haven't in the past few years just because we've been relying solely upon volunteers to provide what we do on Sunday morning. And I just want to be open and saying I'm so grateful for those that have been volunteering their time. It's a huge commitment. What these team members do up here on a Sunday morning is a really big commitment, and I so much appreciate every one of them, and Bobby in particular for taking the time to do what they've been doing. But it's time, and God has clearly led us to say it's time to pursue someone that can do this full time and fulfill the vision that we've spent really the past couple of years just kind of developing.
Well, let me deal with a couple things on it. First of all, a church our size can do this and needs to do this. Be honest with you. If Ron said, I'm interested in the job, would you hire him back? We need that position. What we're saying is we had the position when the church was this size. We didn't rehire over the past year simply because of other issues that we were going through that we needed to process as a church and as a staff as well. What we're saying is time to rehire what we had previously. So can a church this size do that? Well, number one, yes, we can. And God will provide the needs. Two, the right person in this position, and we need to take care to make sure that we find the right person for this position. But the right person in this position will unify what I think is a ministry that is very difficult to always unify because of the diversity of what's going on today. And the right person will bring unity to all of this. He always has. Ron did. Ron is the one who took us through the most changes. And yet Ron brought unity to that. So when we find the right person here, it will be a blessing to our church. In many ways, I think the biggest will not be our singing here or our worship on a Sunday morning, but the biggest issue that this person will be able to bring will bring the unity that particular giftedness is capable of doing in that area that is always a controversial area, which is the area of music. Thirdly, from my perspective, and Doug hit on this a little bit, is how do you justify such a position? Well, there's so many things right now in our music ministry that are dormant that need to be brought back to life. For one simple example, two simple examples, one is special groups haven't been singing. You don't have the person organizing, and you don't have the people behind the scenes doing that. And it takes a lot of behind the scenes work to make that happen, a lot of organizational stuff to make that happen. I'll give you a second example, what I think this person needs to bring to us. What are you doing in children's ministries to develop children's ministries for the future in the area of music? And I think that's a critical area. And then as well as teens. So it'd be great to have teen groups again. It'd be great to have kids sing again. It'd be great to have, so I look at this from the perspective of what's dormant that is already in our church that needs to be brought back and again used.
And in the area of finances, our finance team is looking into that and going to all different areas of our budgeting and looking for that 2015 year at this point. So that's where finances and our deacon team is taking a look at that as well. And I can definitely attest to that. I sat in this, if any of you were here, I mean, this is years ago, before Ron Jones. I actually led music for a year. Anybody remember that? Like back when I had hair? Yeah. I actually led music for a year. Just to tell you, I didn't really know about music. I mean, I guess I can sing, but Tracy and I, if you remember Tracy, Craig at the time, worked through that, and so we were doing basically a full-time job split between the two of us, and you get what you have. And I remember, Paul, when we brought Ron Jones on, and believe me, I was the first one to say, yes, bring on Ron Jones. Bring on Ron Jones. It was like Paul, I remember Paul saying in our service, we're singing again. We're back, in that area of worship again. So, and to continue what we have already done with Bobby and the worship team is what we desire to do, and to take the next step that's needed. Number 4 on here, I am closely connected to the worship team and recognize the need for a full-time worship leader, especially since you said Bobby is stepping back in September. When do you think this will happen? And I guess what's going to happen in September?
Want me to? Well, we're gonna do a temporary. First of all, the key thing is we got to find the right guy. That to me is the key. So that's got to be the priority, not when, but who is the priority. Okay. Secondly, I think there needs to be a temporary plan developed, which we have been working on and continuing to use the volunteers that we have here to do that. We don't see things happening because the finance team is working with numbers. We're looking probably next year in 2015. We want to get through 2014 with temporary situations. There is money in the budget to give some stipend to those that do that, and we may do that. And then the finance team continues to work the process, and we just need to then find the right person. So temporary plan until we get to that. But I just ask you, let's not be in a rush. Let's do this. We ask you to pray because the right person will it will enhance what's here, as Ron did before when we went through the volunteer times. And I'm not trying, please don't take this as I don't appreciate volunteers. What you people have done at volunteer, what Bobby has done and others have volunteered is awesome. But I'm going to tell you what you're going to see when you bring in the right person and he's on staff and he's a part of it. It's going to do what Ron did the last time. It's going to take it and elevate it. But the key is pray we find the right person. We don't have anybody in mind at this point in time. We got to find that person.
Last year, you said that you would next hire would be a youth pastor. That was last year. Last year, you said that the next hire would be a youth pastor. In April, you mentioned that there was a change, and now we are looking for a worship leader. Why the change?
I can, yeah. Let me talk to that for a minute. When Ron Jones, just right about a year ago, resigned his position. Ron was a full-time running the counseling ministry that we had, and he resigned his position because God had called him over to be the campus pastor at Faith Christian Academy. We reacted to that without giving much thought to it, and it's really just an open admission on our part by saying our reaction was, well, then let's just hire a youth pastor and get dug out of youth ministry. And that was really, honestly, the reaction to Ron resigning. It wasn't carefully thought through or even planned out the way that, looking back, it should have been. And so we have to just be honest and admit that was a reaction to Ron stepping out that we didn't carefully plan out. And so we do apologize for that. We're trying to learn to not react to situations in the future, but rather to take careful attention to making decisions that are Spirit-led, not just kind of, hey, this sounds like it's the right thing to do. Well, we need to know that it's the right thing to do. And so what happened during the course of the year was we wanted to pursue men to take over the youth ministry, and God just kept closing that door. Mostly through just finances and the finance team saying, hey, let's hold off. We had a number of men that were qualified and interested. It was actually kind of remarkable how many guys were interested in interviewing if the job opened up, and guys that were really good guys qualified. I mean, it was actually
all from our church, I think.
Yeah, a lot from our church, or had been a part of our church at one time. It was just awesome to see that. But God just kept closing that door, and the job never officially opened up. And I actually struggled with that because I'm like, what are you doing? And so when God closes doors, one of the things that I'm learning is that he's really trying to communicate his will and do something. So I said in my own life, okay, let me step back, because what's God doing here? Is God wanting me to get out of youth ministry? Because it really affected my position more than anything. Is he ready for me to transition out of youth ministry yet? And so I began to search in my own heart, just by way of personal testimony, and where God was kind of doing in my life right now at the current time, and just got to the point where
really was convinced that God was saying, no, that's not where we need to go. And that was just me on a personal level. And so I came to the elders and I said, guys, let me just share with you where I'm at and what I feel God's doing in my life. And we spent quite a few hours and days talking about it and weeks and praying about it and just seeing maybe what is God doing here. And that was about the time when Bobby and I started talking about his transition out of worship ministries. And it was through those conversations and through a lot of prayer, a lot of discussion with the elders that God said, okay, there's a change of course here. And so that took about 9 months, of God to work that in our hearts and our lives. And then I understand we just kind of presented it to you without telling you the journey that we had been on. And so I'll tell you, it was a good journey. And hiring a worship leader means that I'm still the committed youth pastor, although it's not 100% of my focus. It's just our staff isn't there yet to have a dedicated youth pastor. We're working with a volunteer children's director as well, so we need to rebuild our staff to help us go into the future. But we're heading into an awesome summer of ministry with the youth. I'm really excited about kind of transitioning, even mentally saying, okay, I'm taking the youth back, and we're heading on a trip. I'm going to tell you guys about that in a little bit. In a couple weeks, we're heading on a missions trip this year. I'm going to Six Flags tomorrow, so I still love being youth pastor because I get to go to Six Flags. But anyway, I'm as passionate about our youth and our teenagers and the next generation as I ever have been. I really am, and God's really solidified that. That's where He wants me to be right now. Although I have a lot of other responsibilities here at Faith, I really do. But there's really been solidified in my mind that right now, for the time being, that's where I need to be, and then we need to pursue someone to take over the worship.
Yeah, we were looking at the different positions. Youth pastor, I think, affects somewhat like, basically a third of the church, where that worship arts director, as Doug was mentioning, really affects the whole church. As Paul was mentioning, children's ministry development, teen development, obviously every Sunday being up front, and just all the time and energy that it takes to put in. It was like a light bulb going off, realization that, wow, we're really looking for the wrong thing. And God definitely directed us towards the worship art side. Last question, and this one I more want to put out there just because somebody obviously put it in, and it doesn't really connect too much with the actual series itself, but find one to end on. And since you two guys are actually, the ones usually up here speaking and preaching and teaching, you can shrug your shoulders or tell us what you think. When it comes to teaching and preaching, can we have sermon notes? That way we can actively participate in the learning by taking notes throughout, either electronic or paper. And so you mentioned it, we'll put it out there, and obviously I think that's something that can be good. Can I just ask, how many of you would appreciate sermon notes to be printed out and received? Just raise your hand. I'm just curious to see. Mary Ann Brown? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Several? Okay.
6. I got 6.
Now, let me ask you this, because this actually leads to another thing. Pastor Paul has been using the PowerPoint notes behind him for a while. I generally don't, and part of that is because when I have to fill in and preach, I have all my other responsibilities, and then, by the way, you've got to preach Sunday, so it's hard for me to do everything. But how many of you really appreciate the PowerPoint slides behind you, and that's something? Okay. That actually helps me.
It keeps me connected to the message myself.
All right.
You're visual.
I am.
Yeah. I don't know if we can do it or not. It's a lot of extra work. I can send PowerPoints to you ahead of time, or I can send you the Last week we had people here at church that were visiting and asked if I would could I send this to them. So I just sent them a copy of the PowerPoint. If you want one, just email me. I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint if you want. But I think what you're asking, can we have notes during the message itself? Yeah, we can work on that. But I just never think about it in preparation time. How many hours do you think it takes me to put the sermon together? Anybody know? How many? 20? 20? My sermons take me on average about 15 to 18 hours to put a Sunday morning message together. Till I do all the work that needs to be done. It's I always figure 15 to 18 hours to do this. So what I've not done in the past is put together notes for it, but we could. Well, I have about 3 minutes. Let me come back and get this. I want to, just sitting up here thinking, there's one element that nobody's talking about yet. And let me talk about it with you this morning a little bit, just for a couple minutes. One of the elements that is involved in this that has to be thought through by you as a church is my transition out. When I was 55, I put in a 10-year transition plan. Most of you today don't know this. My dad pastored this church until he was 57 years of age. At age 57, he left to go teach in a college. So had I done the same thing my dad, I would be removed here 3 years already. I hit 60 this year. And I'm like, goodness gracious. For those of you that have been there and processed this, you know time flies. What I went through as a new staff member years ago, we went through the transition of my dad to me. And that took place, well, almost 1988, 89, we did that transition. Some of what we're doing today and some of these staff moves that are being done now are being done so that when transitions actually do take place, they can be smooth transitions. And that's important, but nobody's talking about that aspect of it yet. I don't plan to leave anytime soon. I've committed to this the next 3 years of being in here. After that, my plan, and I know God can change plans, but my plan is to transition to being a part of this church, but not being the preaching pastor here anymore. I will tell you, it's a very demanding job. And I'll also tell you this, when it comes time to transition the preaching elder of faith, you all have to vote that. That's your decision. You need to vote that. I can't appoint anybody, just as I wasn't appointed. I was trained, but you had to vote that. And I didn't get 100% vote, if you remember that. But that, some of what is happening today, and some of what is going on today, is in preparation for what's coming for certain within the next 3 to 5 years, is a transition in our leadership. And I really believe that what God has done here at Faith, and what God is doing here at Faith, is really some pretty neat stuff. I teach a ABF class of 20-somethings. It has, in the last year, just exploded. There's some 30s in there, too. There is the next generation filtering into this church, and God bringing them here. Guys, if you can step back, and if you can look and see into the future, which I've always felt was one of the things that God enabled me to do, to see a little bit of the future. You can see how God is transitioning this church so that it's going to be able to go on for years to come. Don't let me get emotional on this. When my dad came and said it was time for him to transition out, he said this. He said, I poured my life into this place. And he did, to the point where it almost killed him. He had a heart attack at age 47. He had open heart surgery, bypass surgery. He just physically, it just honestly, at age 70, he died. And he was worn out. He poured his life into this place. He said so many things to me in our transition. One of those things was, don't do it the way I did it. He said, make sure that your family is your priority, not your church. And I've tried to do that. If I had any of my girls stand up here today, they would tell you that they were priority over church. And they were. They were. And I tried to keep it that way. Family always comes first. Yours should too. The other thing that my father said to me was, after pouring his life into it, and Mom did too, they said, I don't want to see all of these years of work come to an end, but we want to see that we laid a foundation that others can come and build upon that foundation and take it into the future. And we've been able to do that. The last 5 years have been painful because it's been transition. It's been exciting because the transitions that have been made have been good transitions. In addition, we've done a lot of stuff. We bought the Gathering Point buildings. We remodeled. We've got new plans to do stuff to just keep pushing forward and moving ahead. There's some exciting stuff coming. But I want you to know that the next 3 years are going to go fast. And I'm praying this. I don't want my job in the last, as I look back at what God called me to do here at Faith, it was transition faith in this way. It had become a very separated church, but that separation had led us to isolation. And in essence, my ministry has been this: tear down the legalistic structure and get the church out of the building, back into the community, sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's been the essence of my ministry. And so the first 15, 20 years, we tore down the legalistic structures. It's okay if you come to church today and don't wear a tie. Because this is what the 20-somethings want to know. They don't care if we wear ties or not. They just want to know they can wear what they want. They don't have to wear a tie. You see, if you wear a coat and tie today, great. Others didn't. It's okay. That's part of the legalistic stuff that we've gone through. And the church has come back to this. It's now a church that's focused on the gospel, and it's a church that's focused on reaching people for Christ. So some of this stuff that we're going to do in 2015 when we go after a music worship leader, it's really critical. Because one of the things I had when I transitioned was this. Pastor Jim was here, Pastor Lee was here, and they provided stability when my dad stepped out and we made that leadership transition. It was very smooth because you had people that were already in place, already functioning. You as a church had confidence in those people. And Pastor Jim and Pastor Lee enabled a transition to take place very smoothly because you didn't change everything. And so some of these things that we're going to do in the next year, in 2015, and some of the things that we're going to do in the coming years are very important. Say, am I stepping out? Have I lost any passion? No. I still get excited at what I see God doing here at Faith. My plan is to be a part of this place until the day I die. I just hope it's not 70 like my dad, because then I'm only down to 10 years. I hope I got my mom's genes because she's at 82, but then I'm going to run out of money. So I'm like up the creek either way, and I'm going to have to live it this way. God will take care of you through all the way. He'll just take care of us all the way. Walk with Him. Commit things to prayer, because our church is in very crucial times. And I think for those of you that are in here that are 55 and over, who have been a part of this place for a long time, we want to see our kids take it and run with it and even do greater things than we ever did. Right? Oh, you pathetic group of people. Don't defend what was. Don't defend what was, because what was is gone. I wish it wasn't sometimes, but it is. But get excited about what God is doing and what God is going to do. As a church, catches the vision of getting out of the building, getting into the community, and being the church again. It's exciting. It's exciting. But that's part of why we're doing some of the things we're doing. And that's the one thing nobody wants to talk about. So if you want to talk to me about my transition, I'll be glad to talk to you, okay? But please keep it in mind as we make decisions. As much as I hate to say it, and as much as I hate the thought of it, my time is winding down fast. And I want to go out in a blaze of glory. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit in a rocking chair, and I don't want to go golfing, and I don't want to move to Florida. I want to stay involved with my family, and that's my immediate family, and I want to stay involved with my church family because you guys are my extended family. And I'm telling you, we love you guys. My wife and I love you guys from the bottom of my hearts. We always have. And you just mean the world to us. You are the people that have supported us. You are the people that have prayed with us. You are the people that have cried with us. You are the people that have walked through changes with us. You are the people that have gone through the struggles with us. And we love you. And Lord willing, we want to stay here until the day we die. And just keep trying to win people to Christ. Trying to share the gospel. Keep discipling believers. Keep sending out more into the ministry. And just keep doing what we've been doing all along. And then know that as we begin that process of stepping out, that the church is just going to aggressively go forward. Okay? That's the one thing nobody's talking about. But trust me, my wife and I talk about it all the time. It's just reality. This is what you can pray for me. And this is what you can pray for my wife. In many cases, in men here that have pastored, even in our own area, and as I've watched people and I've watched pastors over the years, I've seen this take place. God diminishes the servant, and God magnifies the work. Because the truth is, people come and go. But for 2,000 years, this Church of Jesus Christ has been going and going and going. And if the Lord tarries 2,000 years from today, the church itself will still be going, even though people will come and go and be a part of it. My prayer and my wife's prayer is this. We want to finish our ministry strong. We want to finish it strong. Pray I don't do anything stupid that would just, that I've watched other pastors that have just watched them do things that, split churches, take a group of people out of the church that they pastored and start another church in the area. Guys, if I ever do that, may I recommend a 9mm? I'm serious. May I not get grumpy? Don't let my wife and I get grumpy as we get older. Don't let us get into this, well, he liked it the way it was. If we get that way, just take us to the woodshed, would you? And just say, knock it off. And let's go forward. John Maxwell said this. If you don't have a successor, you're not successful. I've always believed that. And so in my ministry, I've always tried to train guys. And I get together with them, talk to Bob Dunn this week for an hour on the phone. Meet with Jack Tompkinson this week. Talk to Brian McCurry periodically. I talk to guys that over the years, Tim Kuhn, we get together all the time. We found a favorite restaurant, Joe's Crab Shack. Tim and I go crazy there. Talk to Tim Kuhn all the time. And just been able to mentor guys in ministry. And now to be able to mentor guys in ministry again and to see the thing go in the future. Pray. We're making crucial decisions right now. They're big. Get it?